Hello and welcome in this video in which we will talk about the guest traffic tunneling services, also known as GTTS. We will first examine the configuration of the GTTS functionality and its different redundancy mechanisms through specific use cases. Then we will look at configuration example and design guidelines. Please keep in mind that not every details is included in this video. You can refer to the application note about this topic. Note that we won't cover all deployment examples in this video. I'm Benjamin Rougeot, Network Solution Architect, and I'm your host for this topic.
I will first begin by present what GTTS is used for. I will follow next with some knowledge about the protocol used and how it works. The Omni-Access Stellar WLAN architecture is distributed and controllerless. This presents multiple advantages from both performance and cost point of view. There are, however, certain use cases in which traffic can be tunneled and concentrated in a central choke point. Guest users are not corporate, and therefore their traffic should be completely isolated from corporate traffic for security reasons. This can be achieved by tunneling guest traffic to a central location, usually in the DMZ, such that the traffic cannot mix with corporate traffic and can only access the internet. Certain security services, such as IPS, require the security appliance to be deployed in line with traffic, or in a bump-in-the-wire model. Wireless traffic can be tunneled, such that traffic can be scrubbed and security policies can be applied. When migrating from a controller-based architecture to a distributed one, it may be undesirable to deploy additional VLANs at the edge. By tunneling wireless traffic to a central location, no additional VLANs are required at the edge, and only VLAN configuration is done only at the central location. There are some prerequisites that are extremely important to follow. If they are not complied with, the GTTS feature won't work. So it's important to understand the guideline. You can find more details about them in the application note document. A few words first about the software and hardware requirements. The minimum software requirement for AOS switches is 841R02. The minimum software requirement for AWS APs is 302.19. All ALE switches can be configured as guest tunneling termination switch, except for 6560, 6570M, 16900 T20, 340, X20, and X40. For your information, here are the switches and software that I use for the purpose of creating this application note. 8798R01 and 8978R03 global availabilities for switching. And for APs, I use the R4052038 maintenance release. About the OV, all the configuration was done with the 47R1 build 30 release. There are a few architecture guidelines to follow in order to have the GTTS feature work. Each AP can only have one active tunnel at a time towards the same tunnel aggregation switch. One IP can still have multiple tunnels to as many as distinct tunnel aggregation switches. Each SSID is mapped to a tunnel, and the tunnel aggregation switch is capable of only one tunnel coming from each AP. In a more concrete way, if 3 SSIDs using the GTTS feature are broadcasted from an AP, this is mandatory to have at least 3 tunnel aggregation switches, one for each SSID. A layer 3 hop must exist between the far ends APs and the tunnel aggregation switch. In other words, the management IP address of the AP must not be in the same subnet as the IP address sets for the GRE tunnel server IP while creating the SSID. Given that all the traffic transits through the hairpin in the tunnel aggregation switch, the maximum bandwidth of the SSID is kept by the hairpin bandwidth. additional hairpin can be configured as explained in the redundancy chapter, also increases the maximum bandwidth use for GTTS SSIDs. The MTU size must be in consideration when adding the GTTS feature. Given that GTTS use the L2 GRE encapsulation, a total of 24 bytes are added to the packet, 4 bytes for GRE header, plus 20 bytes for IP header. An issue can occur when the GTTS feature is used across a network belonging to another company. In that case, communication between the two network administrators must be done to authorize both networks to allow packets that are slightly larger. Before starting configuration, we need to be sure that a very convenient feature is activated. The Auto Discover feature allows switches to dynamically accept tunnel for far-end IPs. Without the feature enabled, each far-end IP has to be manually set in the switch by adding their MAC address. The maximum number of active tunnels on a tunnel aggregation switch depends on the switch model. This number does not go up if virtual chassis is used. We will see quickly here what is the configuration regarding the switches and access points. All the details are not displayed, so again I strongly encourage you to download the application note if you plan to configure yourself this feature. The first thing to do is to create a service profile and disable some protocols that are usually used by an access port. This is the first command displayed. We will now configure the first port of the hairpin. We select a port and apply the service profile just created. The service corresponding to the tunnel must be created. The service number is the process used by the switch locally, so anything can be chosen. The VPN ID, on the other hand, has to be the same as configured during the SSID creation, that we will see in the next slide. Finally, we have to map the service created to the SAP created, associating the correct VPN ID. Now that the SAP is created, the other side of the hairpin needs to be configured. This is a regular access port where we will add a VLAN. Here you can find a configuration with actual ports, description and IDs. The service ID used is 100. The SAP port is 1149A and the access port is 1150. The VLAN 50 is used for the access port, but this doesn't have to be the same as the VPN ID. This is only because it's more convenient to understand. Doing the SSID creation, instead of choosing a VLAN to be mapped to the SSID, the option Use Tunnel has to be checked. After that, a configuration panel appears. The tunnel ID field is the tunnel ID used in the process. This ID has to be the same as configured in the switch, as we saw in the previous slide. The GRE tunnel server IP address, data VPN server field, is the IP address of the tunnel aggregation switch. The backup GRE tunnel server IP address field is the IP address of the secondary tunnel aggregation switch, in the case of the primary switch is not reachable. This is a non-mandatory field used in the redundancy architecture. Primary and backup GRE tunnel server IP have no requirement to be or not to be in the same subnet. The preemption field enable or not the preemption. Have it enabled means that the primary switch become primary again at the end of the timer while the secondary switch is master, usually due to a failure. The preemption countdown field is the timer which at the end the primary switch becomes the master of the tunnel, while the secondary is currently the master. Very important, support of entropy must be enabled for the use of the GTTS feature. We will see now a few use cases in which the GTTS feature is relevant. We first see the scenario for which the GTTS was first conceived, In this figure, we can see a corporate network. Employee and guest user connect to the network using the same network infrastructure, but guest users does not comply with the company security guidelines. This is why we want to isolate the guest traffic to avoid any security issue. The guest SSID is configured with the GTTS feature, and the far-end endpoint is an ALE switches located in the DMZ enclosed by firewall with strict security policies. That means that even if the AP is where the clients are associated to, the traffic will necessarily go through the GTTS switch before being able to be routed in the network. They cannot spread any security breaches before ending the layer 2 GRE tunnel on the switch. And the GTTS switch is enclosed by firewalls, so the traffic will be examined and blocked if there is any security issue. The GTTS also suits very well in multi-site architecture. We are not talking specially about guests anymore, but about any kind of users. Users can connect and roam across multiple buildings and sites through the campus. And all the traffic from those different locations can be tunneled to a single place in the data center network secured by firewalls. The benefit is the same. Students and teachers will each have their own SSIDs and tunnel to a single place. And while the traffic is tunneled, the malicious software cannot be spread on the network. The traffic will end on the switches in the DMZ, where security policies are applied, which limit the risk of security breaches. The last deployment scenario covered is for service provider and multi-tenancy. Each customer of the service provider can tunnel the traffic from their location to the service provider tunnel aggregation switch. By doing this, security is applied at the access layer of a customer and ends up in the service provider network. Each customer has their own IP group and potentially their own OmniVista. So, each IP group is thus configured with the tunnel aggregation switch IP address of the service provider. The tunnel traffic travels through the already established link between customers and the service provider. This link can be an SD-WAN network or an operator protocol such as SPB or MPLS. In this last chapter, we will see the different redundancy designs that can be deployed in order to guarantee the traffic continuity for end users. First, we will see the most basic GTTS deployment with absolutely no redundancy. There is only one tunnel aggregation switch, one hairpin, and one physical link between the corporate network and the data center network. If any of those components fails, the GTTS SSID fails. We can easily add a first redundancy component to the architecture by duplicate the hairpin using the LSCP LinkAG protocol. Note that you can deploy as many as hairpin as the LSCP protocol can support. Keep in mind that each hairpin requisition 2 ports. So, in this case, one of the hairpin can fail without interrupting the traffic. Using the LSCP LinkAG protocol also increase the wire rate of the hairpin, and thus the maximum bandwidth used by end users. To fill the missing redundancy, we now add a second tunnel aggregation switch. The two switches act as primary and secondary GTTS switches. When the primary is not reachable, the secondary take over the job. Notice that LSCP LinkAG hairpin are present on both switches. There is also a redundancy link between the corporate and the data center network. In this scenario, any component can fail without causing any interruption to the traffic. The primary-secondary design has a convergence time of roughly 5 seconds. The only thing that changed in this design from the previous one is the way the two tunnel aggregation switches are redundant. In the previous one, the primary-secondary design was used. In this scenario, the virtual chassis feature is used. The two physical switches act as a single logical switch. The convergence time here is less than 1 second. There is therefore the redundancy architecture that is the most recommended. In this last scenario, we will see that multiple redundancy design can be chosen. There is one couple of tunnel aggregation switches used for each distinct SSID. with all of them using LACP LinkAG hairpin and multiple connectivity links between the two networks. The redundancy level here is maximal. I think showing you what happened inside the switch is interesting to know, especially for troubleshooting. So I will connect to a tunnel aggregation switch and we will see how the switch reacts to an incoming tunnel. Okay, so I'm connected to a tunnel aggregation switch. So firstly, I will show you quickly the configuration that I have on this switch. So this is the same I show you in the slides. So the first one is the service profile. So the name is guest L2 profile. I have also the service access port, that is a 1149A, with the L2 profile that is applied to this one, with a little description also. Next, I have the service. So the first number is a local number, so used by the switch. The VPN ID, so the VPN ID is very important to know because this is the same that you will configure when you configure your SSID in OmniVista. So you need to put exactly the same VPN ID. Okay, so with little description and little stuff. And the service with the SAP port that is applied. So the SAP port is one part of the hairpin. That is again the 99A with the VPN ID that is applied to the same port. So this is the configuration that I have. The other side of the hairpin is this port, the 1150A. This is only a regular port, an access port with a VLAN that is tagged. So the VLAN here is the 50 again. So I configured exactly the same number, but in fact you don't have to. It's just to be more convenient in my scenario. So this is the other side of the hairpin. We have our two sides here. And the last command important to know is this one, the show service SDP. So this is basically a command that explains, that shows all the tunnel coming from different APs. So the other side of the tunnel, the endpoint of the tunnel. I'm right now connecting with a user on one of the SSID I configured. And if I launch again the same command, we can see that a tunnel is opened now. So with an ID, so the ID with a little star means that is a dynamic object because the configuration is entirely dynamic. I don't have to set all the tunnel by hand. We have the far end IP of the AP of the access point. So this is the access point where my user is connected to. The admin status, the operation status, and the type of the tunnel. So this is L2 GRE.
We are approaching the end of this video. Here are a few takeaways. GTTS stands for Guest Traffic Tunneling Services. It was originally created to isolate guest traffic from other one to avoid the spread of various viruses and malicious software in all the network and keeps the employees safe. The goal is to encapsulate the traffic at the closest of users, then to decapsulate it inside a security perimeter, usually a DMZ, to finally analyze it and destroy malicious content. This feature fits well for companies with visitors, as well as campuses, service providers, and any other scenario where there is a benefit to centralize the traffic while using an IPS, for instance. Quick reminder, don't forget to verify all the technical requirements. Thank you for your attendance during the entire length of this video. I'm Benjamin Rougeau, Network Solution Architect, and I will see you soon for more network-related topics.